Lake Como, May 1901. You absolutely must come see me in Como, you little witch, Einstein wrote Marich at the end of April 1901. Bring my blue dressing gown so we can wrap ourselves up in it, he said. I promise you an outing the likes of which you've never seen. And thus it was that early on the morning of Sunday, May 5th, 1901, Albert Einstein was waiting for Mileva Maric at the train station in the village of Como, Italy, with open arms and a pounding heart. After spending the night in an inn, they decided to hike through the mountain pass to Switzerland, but found it still covered with up to 20 feet of snow. So they hired a small sleigh, the kind they use that has just enough room for two people in love with each other, and a coachman stands on a little plank in the rear and prattles all the time and calls you Signora, Marich wrote. Could you think of anything more beautiful? A few days later, Einstein recalled how beautiful it was the last time you let me press your dear little person against me in that most natural way. And in that most natural way, Mileva Maric became pregnant with Albert Einstein's child. After returning to Winterthur, where he was a substitute teacher, Einstein wrote Maric a letter that made reference to her pregnancy. Oddly, or perhaps not oddly at all, he began by delving into matters scientific rather than personal. I just read a wonderful paper by Leonard on the generation of cathode rays by ultraviolet light, he started. Under the influence of this beautiful piece, I am filled with such happiness and joy that I must share some of it with you. Only after this scientific exaltation came a brief reference to their expected child, whom Einstein referred to as a boy. How are you, darling? How's the boy? He went on to display an odd notion of what parenting would be like. Can you imagine how pleasant it will be when we're able to work again, completely undisturbed, and with no one around to tell us what to do? Maric remained in Zurich, preparing to retake her graduation exams. However, the pregnancy was difficult, and she was often bedridden. Then Einstein, to her dismay, decided to spend the summer vacation again with his mother and sister in the Alps. As a result, he was not there to help and encourage her at the end of July 1901 when she retook her exams. Perhaps as a consequence of her pregnancy and personal situation, Mileva ended up failing for the second time, once again getting a 4.0 out of 6, and once again being the only one in her group not to pass. Thus it was that Mileva Maric found herself resigned to giving up her dream of being a scientific scholar. She visited her home in Serbia alone and told her parents about her academic failure and her pregnancy. Before leaving, she asked Einstein to send her father a letter describing their plans and presumably pledging to marry her. "Will you send me the letter so I can see what you've written?" she asked. "By and by I'll give him the necessary information, the unpleasant news as well." Lieserl. In the fall of 1901, Einstein took an even humbler job as a tutor at a little private academy in Schaffhausen, a village on the Rhine 20 miles north of Zurich. Einstein continued to promise Maric that she would get a good husband as soon as this becomes feasible, but he was now despairing about the patent job. The position in Bern has not yet been advertised, so that I am really giving up hope for it. Maric was eager to be with him, but her pregnancy made it impossible for them to be together in public. So she spent most of November at a small hotel in a neighboring village. Their relationship was becoming strained. Despite her pleas, Einstein came only infrequently to visit her, often claiming that he did not have the spare money. "You'll surely surprise me, right?" she begged after getting yet another note canceling a visit. The official advertisement announcing the patent office opportunity finally appeared in December 1901. The director, Friedrich Haller, apparently tailored the specifications so that Einstein would get the job. Candidates did not need a doctorate, but they must have mechanical training and also know physics. Haller put this in for my sake, Einstein told Maric. Haller wrote Einstein a friendly letter making it clear that he was the prime candidate, and Grossmann called to congratulate him. "There's no doubt any more," Einstein exulted to Maric. "Soon you'll be my happy little wife. Just watch. Now our troubles are over. Only now that this terrible weight is off my shoulders do I realize how much I love you. Soon I'll be able to take my Dolly in my arms and call her my own in front of the whole world." He made her promise, however, that marriage would not turn them into a comfortable bourgeois couple. "We'll diligently work on science together, so we don't become old Philistines, right?" Even his sister, he felt, was becoming so crass in her approach to creature comforts. "You'd better not get that way," he told Marich. "It would be terrible. You must always be my witch and street urchin. Everyone but you seems foreign to me, as if they were separated from me by an invisible wall." In anticipation of getting the patent office job, Einstein abandoned the student he had been tutoring in Schaffhausen and moved to Bern in late January 1902. A few days after Einstein arrived in Bern, Mileva Maric, staying at her parents' home in Novi Sad, gave birth to their baby, a girl, whom they called Lieserl. Because the childbirth was so difficult, Maric was unable to write to him. Her father sent Einstein the news. "Is she healthy, and does she cry properly?" Einstein wrote Maric. "What are her eyes like? Which one of us does she more resemble? Who is giving her milk? Is she hungry? She must be completely bald. I love her so much and don't even know her yet." Yet his love for their new baby seemed to exist mainly in the abstract, for it was not quite enough to induce him to make the train trip to Novi Sad. Einstein did not tell his mother, sister, or any of his friends about the birth of Lieserl. In fact, there is no indication that he ever told them about her. Never once did he publicly speak of her or acknowledge that she even existed. No mention of her survives in any correspondence, except for a few letters between Einstein and Maric, and these were suppressed and hidden until 1986. But in his letter to Maric right after Lieserl's birth, the baby brought out Einstein's wry side. "She's certainly able to cry already, but won't know how to laugh until much later," he said. Therein lies a profound truth. Fatherhood also focused him on the need to make some money while he waited to get the patent office job. So the next day an ad appeared in the newspaper, "Private lessons in mathematics and physics, given most thoroughly by Albert Einstein, holder of the Federal Polytechnic Teacher's Diploma. Trial lessons free." After a few months, Maric moved back to Zurich to wait for him to get a job and, as promised, marry her. She did not bring Lieserl with her. Einstein and his daughter, apparently, never laid eyes on each other. The Patent Office. The job finally came through on June 16, 1902, when a session of the Swiss Council officially elected him provisionally as a technical expert Class 3 of the Federal Office for Intellectual Property with an annual salary of 3,500 francs, which was actually more than what a junior professor would make. His office in Bern's new Postal and Telegraph building was near the world-famous clock tower over the old city gate. As he turned left out of his apartment on his way to work, Einstein walked past it every day. The clock was originally built shortly after the city was founded in 1191, and an astronomical contraption featuring the positions of the planets was added in 1530. Every hour, the clock would put on its show. Out would come a dancing jester ringing bells, then a parade of bears, a crowing rooster, and an armored knight, followed by Father Time with his scepter and hourglass. The clock was the official timekeeper for the nearby train station, the one from which all the other clocks that lined the platform were synchronized. The moving trains arriving from other cities, where the local time was not always standardized, would reset their own clocks by looking up at the Bern clock tower as they sped into town. So it was that Albert Einstein would end up spending the most creative 7 years of his life, even after he had written the papers that reoriented physics, arriving at work at 8 a.m. 6 days a week and examining patent applications. He soon learned that he could work on the patent application so quickly that it left time for him to sneak in his own scientific thinking during the day. Whenever anybody would come by, I would cram my notes into my desk drawer and pretend to work on my office work. Indeed, we should not feel sorry for Einstein that he found himself exiled from the cloisters of academe. He came to believe that it was a benefit to his science, rather than a burden, to work instead in that worldly cloister where I hatched my most beautiful ideas. In addition, his boss Haller had a credo that was as useful for a creative and rebellious theorist as it was for a patent examiner. You have to remain critically vigilant. Question every premise, challenge conventional wisdom, and never accept the truth of something merely because everyone else views it as obvious. Resist being credulous. When you pick up an application, Haller instructed, think that everything the inventor says is wrong. The Olympia Academy. Maurice Solovin, a Romanian studying philosophy at the University of Bern, bought a newspaper while on a stroll one day during Easter vacation of 1902 and noticed Einstein's advertisement offering tutorials in physics, trial lessons free. A dapper dilettante with close-cropped hair and a raffish goatee, Solovin was 4 years older than Einstein, but he had yet to decide whether he wanted to be a philosopher, a physicist, or something else. So he went to the address, rang the bell, and a moment later a loud voice thundered, "I'm here!" Einstein made an immediate impression. "I was struck by the extraordinary brilliance of his large eyes," Solovin recalled. Their first discussion lasted almost 2 hours, after which Einstein followed Solovin into the street, where they talked for a half-hour more. They agreed to meet the next day. At the third session, Einstein announced that conversing freely was more fun than tutoring for pay. "You don't have to be tutored in physics," he said. "Just come see me when you want, and I'll be glad to talk with you." They decided to read the great thinkers together, and then discuss their ideas. Their sessions were joined by Konrad Habicht, a banker's son and former student of mathematics at the Zurich Polytechnic. Poking a little fun at pompous scholarly societies, they dubbed themselves the Olympia Academy. Einstein, even though he was the youngest, was designated the president, and Solovin prepared a certificate with a drawing of an Einstein bust in profile beneath a string of sausages. A man perfectly and clearly erudite, imbued with exquisite, subtle, and elegant knowledge, steeped in the revolutionary science of the cosmos, the dedication declared. The Academy's reading list included some classics with themes that Einstein could appreciate, such as Sophocles' searing play about the defiance of authority, Antigone, and Cervantes' epic about stubbornly tilting at windmills, Don Quixote. But mostly the three academicians read books that explored the intersection of science and philosophy. David Hume's A Treatise of Human Nature, Ernst Mach's Analysis of the Sensations and Mechanics and its Development, Baruch Spinoza's Ethics, and Henri Poincaré's Science and Hypothesis. It was from reading these authors that the young patent examiner began to develop his own philosophy of science.